So good to be with you again. My name is Jeff Fuller. You certainly can find all things interviews, Jay Fuller Interviews on Instagram, the Facebook group, Twitter, and YouTube. The YouTube channel, certainly subscribe. It's just Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube, the little greater than icon at the bottom of the screen, and we'd love to have you subscribe and be a part as we try to listen and learn and share people's stories so we can learn from their stories to make our stories much better. And joining us now is a living legend here in Central Vermont. It's Coach Jack Carrier. Jack, great to have you with us.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Jeff. Thanks for having me on board.
Yeah, it's kind of, I feel a little bit bad I get to you last, but it's probably because you always beat up the teams that I'm coaching, and that's the Williamstown Blue Devils. How long have you been the coach there?
I've been there for 11 full years. I was the assistant in 2008, 2009, but that was just a volunteer. I was still helping out with youth sports in Williamstown, and then I took over after Adam Wheatley left, and I've been there for 11 years now.
And now your son is on the bench with you. What's that been like?
That's pretty cool. As a player, he was a coach on the floor, and did a lot of things that I could see him being possibly a coach down the road. And the opportunity popped up this year to have a JV. The JV opening came up, and he applied, and he got the position. So it's kind of nice. He's been a good one to talk to and consult with, kind of about how the kids respond, and being younger, it actually helps. So.
Oh, definitely. In your 11 years, how have you seen the game of basketball change?
It's changed quite a bit. In our small town, we still have a lot of kids really dedicated to the sport. But when I first started out, it seemed like there was less going on in town, and people were really striving to hit a court a lot. Now we have, quite a few players that want to do that, but it seems like there's more distractions and things that go on. But it's gotten a little more physical, I believe, in the last 5 or 6 years. I think it's kind of gone that way over the course of probably the last 11 years, but the last 5 years, it seems like they've just getting a little more physical on the court.
And not to make excuses for the school that my kids go to, but Division II, I think they're just large enough to offer a lot more sports, so it can get watered down. Where Division III, Vermont, it seems to be the best, where you don't have to have as many sports, but the sports that you do offer, it seems to have a high amount of participation. And you alluded to other things taking place, but especially with basketball, soccer, baseball, the big three. How important is it that kids can focus in a little bit more on those three sports versus having their attentions divided?
Oh, it's definitely a plus being in a smaller school like ours. We do, we don't have wrestling. We do have wrestling. Wrestling is our other sport that a lot of kids are actually starting to take part in. But, the hockey teams, I look at a neighboring town, Northfield, competing with hockey and basketball. It's a small school to offer both. And I know they share, and they go other places to play hockey and stuff, or have people come in and play with them in a co-op. But yeah, it's a lot easier not competing with some other sports at that time. I know when I was in high school, it was just baseball, basketball, and soccer as well. And a lot of kids play all three sports in a small school like ours too. And that cross training really helps.
Now, talk to me a little bit. Jacob Tassi was a great player for you this season. Talk about some of the athletes that have come through where you've really seen them develop. It seems like Jacob was good ever since fifth grade, or the first time I saw him. But talk about what it's been like for you as a head coach, high school coach, to see kids really develop and come into their own.
Yeah, it was great. I had a great opportunity coming in my first year, having 5 starting seniors. So it was kind of, it was different. Year 11 was totally different. I only had Jacob as a senior this year, with a whole bunch of sophomores and a few juniors. But seeing these players, that group of 5 seniors was different, starting out, because they really were open and responded. But to grab a kid, the following year we had Jason Manwaring, a big name in town, come in. He's our all-time leading scorer in Williamstown. To watch him come through and develop over a 4-year period of time, following him was Garrett Poulin and Hunter McLaughlin. I watched my own son Brandon come in, and these kids that you see for 3 or 4 years develop over the years and learn your system. They're teaching that system with it practices and within games, they get to know me as a coach and my assistants as well. A dead ball situation sometimes with some of those guys with a high basketball IQ, you didn't even have to make a call. I mean, they doing their own play call out of bounds and even on the floor. So, that they and some of those guys had a real natural high IQ for basketball. So it was really nice to have those guys on board.
And I think too, some of these guys I would just see playing pickup. So whether it's Playground 2000 or they just love to play. And my feeling with AAU is a little bit jaded, but sometimes I think players want to play with a scoreboard and a referee instead of just playing together and building that rapport on the court. The question I have for you is with Brandon, I believe he scored 1,000 points. Where did that love of basketball come from? Did you push that on him? Where did you receive that love of basketball? Was basketball your first love?
Yeah, actually it was. Growing up, I grew up on a family farm up in Williamstown, and my dad used to joke, I used to actually dribble the basketball in the barn all the time. And, when you're trying to have a dairy farm going, all the cows around, you had to become a pretty good dribbler and stuff because, you didn't want to lose the ball because they could lay in the wrong spot. But yeah, I always had a basketball in my hand, dribbling a lot. And I stress that to the kids nowadays as just ball handling. Brandon at a very young age, including my daughter, Carissa, but Brandon really, he would be down in our basement. We would hear him thump, 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 thump. Probably at the age of, he was 3 or 4 years old, starting with his little Nerf hoop and everything. But after that, he made little obstacle courses around the tables downstairs and everything. And he just dribble around and he just really loved it. And then we actually put in a small basketball court so the whole family could play out here. But yeah, it was just a natural love.
So what did you have to do or get for your wife so Brandon could dribble around the basement all day?
She's great. She didn't grow up in a basketball family, but she was, at a young age, we started a K1 basketball program here in Williamstown. And so my daughter she's 2 years older, Carissa. She's 2 years older than Brandon. And we started that. And, she really took the basketball as well. And my wife watching the early teaching up through by the time they got to high school is like watching all the fundamentals come up through. So she understood the game and she understands it well now. And she loves to watch it. She comes to all my games now.
Well, it's a great sport and definitely something about your gymnasium. It's not huge, but it's always packed. And I think the community loves to support the students, but definitely support a winner. I had the opportunity to interview David Marlowe, the athletic director at Mount Mansfield. Yeah. I think you too, from what I've heard from several coaches, fans, parents, athletic directors, have built that culture of winning, whether it's from the youth programs or on up. How important is that? How do you sustain that culture when sometimes you do have a down year, which you probably never do, but when sometimes it seems as though you aren't putting up the banners, but it seems like the gym is still packed with young fans, with elementary kids that are so excited to be there?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because high school basketball, I thought as a coach, I would never feel the pressure that I do, of winning. Even when we were winning, when you lost the game, people would be like, "So what happened?" and we've lost some championship games, and people, it's tough. But as far as getting kids, you try to build them up at a young age, getting kids to the gym, watching high school games. And, you hope they just have that drive and ability to do it. You're going to have some bumps in the road where you're going to have a couple years, especially with a school our size. We went through a bit of it last year. Our record turned out okay. We made it to the quarterfinals, lost in overtime. But we didn't make it to the auditorium. So the questions that you get, well, what happened? How come you're not there? And it's like, well, it's not going to happen every year. And, I think we were very successful, and I would have never dreamt of being that successful. And, it came from hard work from a lot of players and a lot of coaches. And, we're thankful for that. But.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this past season. And it was a slow start for you guys. Some suggested that it's because Jacob was seeking that 1,000th point. I would like to know, do you think that played a role in that slow start? And after you got that, you guys certainly did go on a roll.
I don't think it played a part at all. I think what Jacob was doing was knowing we had, 4 starting sophomores along with him. I think he was trying to let those guys build their own roles and become part of the team. I actually think he got less selfish in some situations where he should have. There was one game at home where he should have taken the shot to try to win the game, and he actually tried to pass the ball inside. The ball got bobbled a little bit, and the defender got it. But we asked him after, how come you didn't take the shot? And he said the guy was open. So he really, all last summer we talked about, he was going to be the leader of the team. He knew that, and I told him with that leadership's going to come a lot of responsibility, and the better we make the surrounding players, the deeper we're going to make a run with. And he bought into that, and I thought he did a great job in practices and in games.
Yeah, you could definitely see that maturity. Being a senior with a young team and really leading and finding that role for the other players was so important. It was interesting, little behind the scenes talk, I guess. When I was asked, the Harwood boys have a new basketball coach this season, they said, what about Williamstown? I said, they have one kid you have to watch out for, maybe play a box and one. And so the first half, as you recall, they played a box and one, but with 3 seconds left, he gets open and he hits a shot, a step, not literally a step over half court to end the half. And it was just one of those things of, a box and one means the entire time you need somebody on that kid because he'll find a way to score. I know as a coach that when the other coach gives players that much respect, you just kind of smile inside. How much pride did that give you, seeing Jacob again as the only senior getting that much respect? Did that give you a sense of pride, or what did you feel for Jacob, knowing that he had deserved that that role and that respect from other coaches?
Well, it's interesting with Jacob because, as a freshman, he came in with a bunch of seniors, and so it was the flip side of that. And so when he had his chance to shine as a senior and kind of pass the torch on to some of these other guys, it was really nice to see, people say, hey, Jacob's right here. He's our leader, and he can hit that shot. And, just seeing what he's overcome in the last 4 years, without going into detail, he's had some issues, and we both talk about it. We are very close, actually, and I think we've both helped each other come through things like that. So inside, it's there's a tear that twinkles down my eye every now and then when I see a player do something special like that.
And it's so true that strength is born from adversity, and you've seen that with individual players, also with your team. Williamstown definitely has a lot of success over the years. Just talked to Mike Osborne, former coach at Johnson State, now coaching at CVU, and he remembers fondly before moving to Barrie, just being a part of the Blue Devils family. I just want to talk a little bit about one game. I'll talk about the first half of the game. The championship game against Thetford last season, that first half for me was unbelievable with the amount of 3-point shots made by both teams. Can you just talk about that first half? As a coach, did you just sit back and cheer, or was that just part of the game plan the whole time?
Well, we knew facing Thetford, they were going to pack in, the backline defense and try to stop us getting inside. And we knew we had to hit some outside shots so that we could open up the paint. And we were a little surprised how many they hit against us because we were in our zone. A lot of people, have asked over the years about why we play the zone. I said we play the zone a lot. We'll play man when we need to. And many of our championship games we've gone to man and in the playoffs. But yeah, just watching those threes go down, that environment is something surreal anyways, when you're out there watching your players at the end of the season just give it their all. But yeah, I remember seeing Tyler Orton and Colby Jingers come down, drain a couple threes, and I was like, oh, this is so good, because I had the feeling if we could open up that man-to-man, we were really going to open up the game, and we started to. And then it was pretty tight. So.
It was so entertaining. I actually bought the game tape, which the only high school game that I've bought that my kids weren't playing in. And so it was just so entertaining. You mentioned the auditorium. This is a picture of it in the background in the Barrie Odd. Nothing like playing there. I'm actually an assistant to an assistant. That was a joke, but I made the end of the bench this year with our girls, a semifinal game. Talk to me as a coach. Does it ever get old playing or coaching at the Odd?
It'll never get old. Each year's a new experience, but, I can still remember that first year walking up there. I actually had to look at John Pellegrini, my assistant coach that year. And I said, you got to give me a minute, because I'll tell you, man, it was emotional walking up through. You look up as you come up out of that stairwell and you see all the blue and the other team's colors, but I saw all that amazing blue. This town supported that team tremendously, and it was really neat to have a chance at it.
And so something about playing at the Yacht, it's so loud. How did you get your players ready for the Yacht in the past years? I know some coaches have switched to colors and they just hold up different sheets instead of, but how do you prepare kids for the noise level?
Yeah, I mean, you have to come up with some design to call your plays. We were doing it with symbols and stuff with my hands. We had some basic offenses we were running and stuff, but when we wanted to switch up a defense or anything, it's hand signals, and you got to tell them to relay. We just give reminders. It's a dead ball situation. Make sure everybody knows what we're in next. But yeah, it's a lot of hand signals, or I do see some people use the whiteboards and everything else. So.
Yeah. And this picture behind me, I found it. I think it's either Illinois or Indiana, but it's a junior high game, which it doesn't say a lot about their fans. But it does bring up the point that if we are able to have sports without fans, what's your mindset going into that as a coach?
Well, I mean, I definitely want the kids to be able to play a season with any means that we can do it. Obviously, it's have that spirit, that six man there that can jump in and help you in the game, when you get some momentum going and stuff. Kids are going to have to be more motivated on their own, with less, fewer fans and stuff cheering them on. But I would say, if the kids can play and we can do the season, we have to do what we can. Times have changed and we'll have to adapt to what we can. I really look at this past season and seeing all the kids that missed their spring sports. The girls weren't able to finish their season out. There's just so many things there's bigger things out there, than sports, but some of these kids really need them.
Yeah, especially the seniors, you feel for them. But you are correct that sometimes sports really reins in or provides boundaries or safety or family for some of these kids that do not have that have fragmented families. Can you just talk about why sports are so important for student athletes here in the state of Vermont?
Well, I think a lot of times it motivates them academically. Some of these kids, they kind of have that support system within the school. Some kids, that I've had on the team, I had one player a long time ago. He really stopped going to school after basketball, and it hurt me. I tried to get in touch and talk about it, but there's that part. There's the support system within the school. There's that support system on the court. After games, people feel like they've worked hard. They're a tight knit family, and trying to build that real closeness that some kids need that they don't have. It motivates them as a worker. I think sometimes you see a student athlete inside the classroom, they're not such a hard worker, but on the court they are. And I always tell them, it's not always going to be book work. It's going to be some type of physical activity. And, I've got some players that, they're just such hard workers outside of basketball too, because they have a motivation that they want to, get a good job and go work hard.
That's so good and so true. And Coach, I have to say that you have some of the best Wi-Fi of interviews that I've had so far. So, man, I'm very appreciative that it's working so well. Question about one of the players you mentioned in the past, Jason Manwaring. He was definitely a good athlete. He was a tremendous player. And I thought he was going to have a good college career, but then I think it was a knee injury, leg injury. Can you just talk about how disappointing that was for you to see him not able to pursue his dreams on the next level?
Yeah, it was tough because, coaching him for 4 years and watching, the potential he had. And, he certainly played well above a lot of, people that, around here. I would say one of the better Central Vermont players that I've seen come through. Could shoot over anybody at any time, it seemed like. Watching him go to, he went to Castleton and then he had the leg injury. He was kind of nursing that a little bit between his junior and senior year. It recovered. He got okay to play and everything. Senior year, he played, but you could tell it was a little off. But he went to the doctor and had it checked out, and everything was okay. And then when I think something happened during that summer between his senior year and college, and then they shut him down for the year. And it was hard because I coached the Twin State team with
Yeah.
Mike Osborne in 2014, and he was co-player of the year, co-player of the game. He was matched up with another kid from New Hampshire, and they went head to head. It was probably one of the best battles I've ever seen because the kid he played against was amazing, and so did Jason. Jason played amazingly well, and so to not see what he could do in college, it was very upsetting. But you know, he's doing good things now. He's out.
Yeah.
He's out in Utah, I think, working hard. So
good guy. Hey, so with coaching, I know that AAU and Summer League is really a big part of keeping players together, working on their game. What are your thoughts on this year with losing some of that time, that chemistry building for these players?
You know, basically my belief is, you know, in point guard college, PGC camps will stress it. Kids have to have an off season, and that off season, these kids have to be working on their game. So whether it's me working with them or those guys working on their game, I think if they develop some skills and work on some basic moves, their ball handling, some, you know, weightlifting and physical activity and stuff, that they can get better in this offseason. I think it's the team chemistry is going to be affected a little bit, I'm sure, just because the kids aren't hanging out as much together as I'd like to see them. But I think these kids, the more they work on their own and develop their game, if those kids do that, I think you're going to see a big difference in, you know, whatever teams develop that atmosphere.
I agree. Hey, Coach, thanks so much for making the time. We'll have to get you back on. I could talk basketball forever. And you're one of the best. So thank you so much for making the time today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Again, that's Coach Jack Carrier of Williamstown. We'll be back with more great interviews coming up after this. But yeah, the Blue Devils, what a legacy Coach has built there. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks all.